MKrekar in the event he's extradited here from Norway. It's now 10 o'clock at night. I have a flight in a couple of hours to Oslo, where I'm supposed to be meeting with Norwegian officials. This is the letter that's supposed to kind of tilt the scales. It's a linchpin, and right now I don't have it. Without it, I don't know where we are. It's crunch time. A couple of hours ago, we got a call from the general saying that he was sending an emissary with a letter. This is the letter that's supposed to kind of tilt the scales, and right now I don't have it. He hasn't showed yet. As we were preparing to leave the hotel, a representative from the Counterterrorism Bureau showed up with the letter. General Hassan and others in the government here decided that Lahore Talabani, who's the chief of counterterrorism, was the most appropriate person to issue the letter. Talabani's not only the chief of counterterrorism, he's also the nephew of Iraq's president. This is ammunition. It seems to address every concern that Norway has laid out. Now the question is, what will Norway say?
No one is contesting the fact that MKrekar represents a threat. His organization has killed Americans, Brits, Australians, countless Iraqis, and yet he gets to live in Norway with all the legal protections in the world. The Norwegians say they need assurances from the Iraqis gave those assurances to me, and I'm going to pass those along to the Norwegians and see where they stand.
Adam's flying in with a letter to see if we can get Norway to finally move on this person and extradite him.
So for me to show up and talk to David and Roger and Adam and say, you know, I don't even know if he's here, well, that's unacceptable.
It's about 2 hours at the front door, and then at 2 hours and 1 minute, bam, there he is.
The agreement, we would like to officially state that if MKrekar returns to the Kurdistan region, he would be treated within the letter of the law. This afternoon, you and I are sitting down and meeting with the State Secretary for Immigration, who has the portfolio and the authority to send him to Iraq.
It's come down to one ministry that has the power to represent the entire government and make the decision to send MKrekar back to Iraq.
Everybody in the government, the National Prosecution Service, the Norwegian Parliament has said that this very office is the office responsible for the deportation of MKrekar. This whole week has been leading to this meeting. We've been talking. There seems to be a lot of frustration about MKrekar here. What's your thinking on that?
When asylum seekers come to Norway and ask for protection in Norway, every single case is assessed individually by the immigration authorities.
And you have denied his application for asylum?
In 2003, that asylum status and the residence permit were revoked, and he was deemed to be a threat against national security.
So your Supreme Court has deemed him a threat to national security?
The Supreme Court has upheld the decision made by the immigration authorities.
And his permit to stay here has been revoked?
That's correct.
So what's the holdup?
The holdup is the situation pending in Iraq.
To be fair, that was 6 years ago.
Yes, and the government is following the development in Iraq in order to ensure that at the time a decision can be made to implement the expulsion order.
What do you actually have to have in front of you that will say, my goodness, we believe he will get a fair trial in Iraq?
I think it's not very useful sort of to speculate on the exact format or the exact information which would be sufficient in implementing that.
But it doesn't
order.
sound like there are goalposts. I mean, this man has been here for years, and nobody seems to know what will satisfy the authorities in order for him not to be here.
Well, I have no other answers than I've already given you, and there has to be sufficient information, sufficient evidence.
I just flew in from Iraq this morning, And the Kurdish authorities, they're all saying the same thing, that they will not torture him, they will not kill him. They said he can bring a Norwegian lawyer, the process will be transparent. Why don't you take yes for an answer?
Well, I note that the Kurdish authorities have provided you with that paper. They have so far not provided us with this paper, so that's...
But the Iraqis are asking, what do we need to do? And you're not telling them what they need to do. They're just supposed to know what they need to do?
I think it's stated very clearly.
I don't know what to say. You know, the buck stops here, except when it doesn't stop here. They need assurances from the Iraqi government, and yet you can't tell us what those assurances need to be.
This is ridiculous. I have never seen such a two-step in my life. This was intentional. They're just hoping that we go away. And I think that that's amazing. It's this office.
Yeah.
It's clearly this office. Everybody in the government is saying it's this office.
She says right there, she's leaving the room. He's not a convicted terrorist. Well, of course he's not convicted, because you won't deport him to face justice.
They don't want to make that final stroke of the pen to hand him over.
This guy's a designated terrorist. You've got everybody. The U.S., the UN, the Canadians, the Australians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis. Hell, you've got the Norwegian Supreme Court saying this man represents a threat to national security. And yet, he's still here.
And all the government needs to do is make the decision to send him to Iraq.
We've confirmed where he lives, we know where he's at, and we can go get him anytime we want.
He's making Norway essentially a safe haven for terrorist activity.
Norway is absolutely letting justice get in the way of justice.
I'm chomping at the bit to go talk to him, so what do you guys say we head over there and get this thing kicked off?
Yeah, let's go see him.
We're on our way to meet MKrekar. When it became clear that Norwegian immigration officials simply were not going to act, we reached out to some of his associates and were surprised to get an email back from the mullah himself. A man who intelligence officials have called Osama bin Laden 2.0, an Islamic Nazi. And they call his organization Ansar al-Islam, an al-Qaeda affiliate and an al-Qaeda battalion.
He primed the bomb that is Ansar al-Islam. He is responsible for everything they have done. He incited them to do these acts of terrorism.
We're going over to his house to talk to him about his involvement, his stance, his philosophical views.
MKrekar, his tongue is his weapon. Anybody that's against his ideology, he wants him dead.
I guess the primary difference between this man and Osama bin Laden is Osama bin Laden is hiding in the mountains, while this man is living in plain sight here in Norway.
All courts in Norway have said that he's a threat.
He's walking around freely, and that is, to me, ludicrous.
I think in having an open conversation, we might actually get him to implicate himself in some of the very crimes that the Norwegians feel he's alleged to have done.
He's blessed suicide bombings, literally invented the vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, led the world in beheadings, and he's living here in Norway. It's hard to believe. Now, several years back, you founded a group called Ansar al-Islam. You talked about weapons as being one part of the way in which a Muslim carries out jihad. What kind of weapons and tactics are acceptable?
من حذاء إلى قنبلة ذرية وكل دفاع كل سلاح. If I can get Kalashnikov, I will use Kalashnikov.
So, by that token, suicide